Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We'll give the others a little while, 2 more minutes to join us, and then we'll begin. I am still in Dubai. However, the lockdown is being eased, well, within the next 48 hours, in that some of the shopping malls are reopening, and to a limited extent, people can go to the office as well. However, they must practice very strict social distancing. Although the shopping malls are opening, nobody over the age of 60 is allowed in. A limited number of people are allowed into them at any one time. They must all wear masks and gloves, and they must keep 2 meters distance between themselves and anybody else in the shopping mall. In the offices, which will reopen on Monday. Oh, hello, Cherise. Good morning, Barbara. Nice to see you again. Look, let me just say this. I know you're being respectful when you call me Sir Richard, but I doubt I will ever receive a knighthood. So it's just Richard. But it's very nice to be called Sir as an English person. Thank you. Right. Let's begin. I'm going to switch my video off today because I'm being pestered by a fly. And if I suddenly start waving my hands around as I try to shoo it away from my face, you may be distracted. So that's the only reason I'm stopping the video. Let's stop it now and share my screen. Well, today I want to look at an aspect of legal writing and contract drafting, which may be of use to you, those of you who are already qualified as lawyers, in relation to your contract and legal document drafting. And that involves the use of the word shall. Now, it sounds an innocent enough little word, but there are very good reasons why you should not use it in your contract drafting or your legal writing, as I'll explain in our presentation. The next thing I want to look at is prepositions. Legal prepositions are so very difficult because they're not the same as prepositions in ordinary English conversational use. They have a specific legal meaning. And because they have a specific legal meaning, if you don't use them exactly as you should, you can create the wrong legal meaning. Now, if you do this in a contract or a legal document, that can end up in a dispute, litigation, arbitration, mediation, but certainly it will cause a dispute because you have not said what you mean. You think you know what you've meant, but the other side will read it and see something different and expect something different. And then the last thing I want to do is cover some more legal Latin. There are too many legal Latin words for me to cover in this particular course. Although they're covered in the legal English course, I'm going to show you about 25 words. I'm only going to deal with about 7 or 8 particularly important ones, and then I'm going to make the presentation available for you to go through the remainder of them in your own free time. Otherwise, we'll just sit here for 5 or 6 hours, me telling you what the legal word is and what it means. It's not very interesting. All right, so let's go to the presentation, shall we? So, we're going to take a small section from our contract drafting course. This is one of our most popular courses. If any of you are contract drafters and you want to polish your contract drafting skills, I recommend it. We get very good reviews for this course. People write to us. The reviews you see on our website are genuine. These are genuine comments from people who've taken the course. They seem delighted with it. Well, you will remember that I told you that legal English derives from a number of different sources: Latin, Anglo-Saxon, Norman French. There are some words from ancient Norse and from the Jute language. But the word shall was a word invented by the Anglo-Saxons. When the Germanic tribes invaded England in the 6th and 7th centuries, two of them in particular fused into one group and became dominant, the Angles and the Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons, and they started a new language, Anglo-Saxon. There were not as many words in the language then as there are now, because Anglo-Saxon became early English, which became, of course, modern English over the next 1,000 years. Now, in particular, one word they invented was the word shall. And shall has 5 different meanings. Now, when we're writing a contract, what we're trying to do is create clarity. We want the exact meaning of our message to be understood because we're imposing obligations. We don't want anybody to be able to escape from their obligations because they can say they didn't understand what we wrote. They didn't understand what they were signing. The common law courts make it very difficult for people to do that. They have to produce sufficient evidence on the balance of probabilities to show that it's more likely that they did not know what they were signing. Because the common law assumes if you sign a document, then 3 things have happened. First, you've read it. Second, you've understood it. And third, you have agreed with it, which is why you signed it. Somebody to go along to court later and say, I didn't understand it, that's why I signed it. Well, court won't be very impressed with that. However, the word shall is very difficult to use in contract drafting. The world's leading authorities on legal writing, and that includes Professor Brian Garner, the acknowledged world's leading authority on legal writing, try to stop their students using the word shall when drafting contracts. And I agree. Because there were far fewer words in the Anglo-Saxon or early English language when the word shall was invented, it was given 5 different meanings. So using a word with 5 different meanings doesn't create a great deal of clarity in a contract. It's much better to use a more modern word which only has 1 meaning. Let me show you what I mean. Here, you're used to seeing this as the imperative. We all are from contracts. The tenant shall pay rent to the landlord on the first Monday of each calendar month, meaning the tenant absolutely has to. There's no escape from it. You absolutely have to pay the rent. Well, the modern word meaning you absolutely have to is must, because must only has 1 meaning. You must do it. Now, much better to use a word with just 1 meaning. The tenant must pay the rent to the landlord on the first Monday of each calendar month. So if you're imposing an absolute imperative obligation, don't use shall, use the word must. All right, so far nobody's confused because you're all used to it. Now you know that shall in ordinary conversational English is a reference to the future. So let's have a look at it in a contract. This notice to quit shall expire on 31st December 2007. I don't mean it must expire. I mean it's going to expire because the time will pass. Well, if the time will pass, let's not use shall. Let's use the other word which is simpler to understand. Let's just use will. This notice to quit expires or will expire on 31st December. Now you'll know from your English lessons, if it's a definite timetabled event in the future, you can use the present simple, expires. So shall, which in ordinary conversational English means a reference to the future, can be replaced by the present simple. That's very confusing. Much better just to say will expire. So when you're referring to something happening in the future, either use the present simple or better still, use the word will. So far, though, nobody's really confused. But what about this? Giving somebody the right to do something. The contract of employment for the employee says the employee shall have 5 weeks holiday a year. I don't mean the employee must have them whether they want to take 5 weeks or not. You must leave the office for 5 weeks, even if you don't want to. No, I don't mean that at all. And I don't mean, well, you can start taking 5 weeks holiday after you've worked for us for 2 years. For the first 2 years, you'll just have 3 weeks. I don't mean that either. What I mean is, you have the right to it. So in other words, you are entitled to. The employee is entitled to 5 weeks holiday a year. So when you're giving somebody a right or an entitlement, use is entitled to or will be entitled to. And again, notice that present simple, shall, is being replaced by the present simple, is. To stop the confusion, I would suggest you should say will be entitled to. However, if they're entitled to it as soon as they sign the contract, then is more accurate. And then, what about this? Giving somebody a discretion, and by that I mean a discretionary power. The trustees shall use the fund in any manner that they consider fit. I do not mean they must use it. I do not mean that they will use it. I do not even mean that they're entitled to use it. They've got more power than that. They have the power to use it. Now, I said I wanted to use a word with only one meaning. Well, when we write in legal English and we want to use a word which describes having the power, then believe it or not, that word is the ambiguous word may. May means has the power to. The tenant may assign the lease after 2 years. It means the tenant has the power to. I don't mean the modal verb use of likelihood or possibility in the sense of buy a lottery ticket, you may be lucky. Or he may arrive on the train, or perhaps he'll come by car. I don't mean that. I mean has the power to. May, when written in a legal document, means has the power to. So, if the document is required to grant a discretionary power to someone to use or not use entirely at their choice, then use the word may rather than shall, which is confusing. Do we mean must or will? No, we mean they have the power to. Right. So, let's have a little exercise, all right? This exercise, I believe, will demonstrate to you the danger of using shall. Right, there's about 30 or 40 of us in the lesson, right? We'll compare some answers to see how some people are confused by the word shall. Let's have a look at this. You're acting for the purchaser of some land. The contract arrives from the seller. It says purchase price shall be $125,000. Right, now what does shall mean there? What does he really mean? Purchase price shall be 125,000. Does he mean must be, will be, entitled to be, may be? Does he mean the present simple? Let's have a look at some of the answers. I'll wait till we've got about 10 answers, then I'll just compare them. Now, don't forget, I've said it many times, don't worry about making mistakes. If you could do this without my help, I wouldn't have a job. Let's have a look at what we got in the chat box. Is, will be, must. Right, now look, you're all good lawyers. Will be, must. Right, values. Now, Jochen, you are correct. Well done, Jochen Flegler. It's is. It's not must be. It's not will be. You see the confusion that's been caused by using the word shall? What we really mean is the purchase price is. The present simple. You see how confusing it is to use the word shall in contracts? All right, let's have a look at the next one. You're acting for a company borrowing money from a bank. The loan agreement, the loan document, arrives from the bank, and it says each corporate officer shall sign the agreement in the space provided. Now, what does shall really mean there? What do they mean by shall? I think more of you will get this one, at least I hope you will. Getting plenty of answers. Let's have a look what we said. May, must, must is entitled to. Right. Well, again, you see the confusion. It's Must. Each corporate officer must sign the agreement in this way provided. Now, wouldn't it? Now, you saw how many of you were confused by using the word shall there. Well, in fact, if the other side had just written must, nobody'd be confused. Must. Okay? So this is really proving my point that shall is very confusing. And that's why Professor Garner and the others don't want their students to use it. This word has 5 different meanings. And you're asking the reader to try and guess from the other words in the sentence which meaning you've chosen. That's not very good writing at all. The whole idea of legal writing is to be understood by the reader. What we're doing here is not creating clarity, we're creating confusion. Let's have a look at number 3. The company secretary to a company which has a big building project in the desert has to visit the project once every 2 months, stay overnight in a local hotel and pay with his or her credit card. Then hire a car in the morning to drive out to the construction site, again paying with their credit card. Provided that they then submit the expense claim form to the company, and provided the expenses are approved, they will be reimbursed or repaid with their next salary payment. But if, for example, they go to a hotel and drink the entire contents of the hotel minibar, or order bottles of champagne and drink them, I doubt the company will reimburse them. Or if they hire a Ferrari motor car rather than a Ford to visit the construction site, I doubt the company will reimburse them. So what does shall mean here in number 3? The secretary shall be reimbursed for all expenses. Now this is a real test. Let's see what we've got this time. May, will be, only be, is entitled to. Well done, Juven. Will be. Well, I'm sure the company secretary wants it to be will be, but I'm the company owner and I see he's had a party in the hotel room, charged it up to expenses, and given me the invoice for $2,000. I don't think I'll pay. So it's certainly not will be reimbursed, because I'm certainly not going to pay it. Those of you who wrote is entitled are correct. The secretary is entitled to be reimbursed. It's not may be reimbursed, like in the sense of possibility. If I told you in your contract of employment, you may be paid on the first Monday of each month, you wouldn't be very happy with that. Is entitled, Cristiano, very good. Slavik, very good. Yeah? Is entitled. Now, the whole purpose of this little exercise is to show you how dangerous it is to use the word shall in your legal writing. Here's a word. Legal writing is all about clarity, making the message easier for the reader to understand. And contracts in particular are all about clarity. It's not a good idea to use a word with 5 different meanings if you're trying to express one particular meaning. So like Professor Garner and the other professors who stop their students using shall, I recommend you stop using shall in your contracts and legal documents and use the more precise, more modern English words instead. All right, let's have a look at this. Here's some more. Escrow agent shall be entitled to receive an annual fee in accordance with standard charges for services to be rendered hereunder. What does that really mean there? What does shall mean there? Anybody? Let's see what we've got. Is. Very good, everyone. Is entitled to. No, not, well, yeah, Applejack, I suppose, but I prefer just is. What have we got here? Shall be entitled, is entitled. Yes, is good. May. Not so much, Elenia. It may, as a modal verb, indicates possibility, and may really means has the power to. Has the power to be entitled, not so much. Better to use is entitled. Okay. What about number 5? Each member shall have the right to sell, give, or bequeath. This style of writing came in with the Norman Conquest. Much better to choose one word now in the 21st century, 954 years later, to express what we mean. Sell means to sell. Give means to pass to somebody without asking for money. And bequeath means to leave to somebody after your death. If you mean they've got all three things, three rights, fine. If you mean just one of those three, then select the one you mean. Anyway, each member shall have the right to sell, give, or bequeath all or any part of his membership interest to any other member without restriction of any kind. Let's see what we mean here. May, has the right to. Well, Jochen, yes, in the sense that it's may. Has the right to is expressed in the law by the word may. Each member has the right to, okay, or may. Good. Jochen, you're more correct than me. Well done. I've forgotten what was coming next. Each member has the right to sell, give, or bequeath. Very good, everyone. All right, let's leave that topic. I've made my point. Use modern words when you're drafting contracts. Don't use old-fashioned English. Not the here with, there with, hereby, deemed, by virtue of, in lieu of. Use modern English. Now, grammar. Well, we looked at prepositions. They're difficult. What's even worse are prepositions on steroids, compound prepositions. They obstruct the meaning of your message when you write. They're great when you're making speeches. If you're addressing an audience, compound prepositions are wonderful when you're speaking as a public speaker. Because, in fact, they sound pompous, which meant sometimes that's what you want to do when you're making a speech. But in writing, they just get in the way of the information. Compound prepositions are prepositions made up of several words. They're more complex, fancier versions of regular prepositions. Now, here are some of the worst, but they're amongst the most frequently used, which is why I put these 10 here. In order to means to. For the purpose of means for. With reference to means relates to. In connection with means relates to. With regard to means relates to. In the event of means if. On account of means because. By means of is by. In conjunction with means with. With a view toward means, well, relating to. Let me show you what I mean when we use them in sentences. Look at this sentence in bold black type in the middle of the screen. They sound very pompous, very formal. They're stuffy, they're stiff. They're great for public speaking, but not so good in writing. We prepared the interrogatories, which are the questions in a litigation case. We prepared the interrogatories in conjunction with the Puccini matter hastily in order to meet the discovery deadline. Well, this phrase, in conjunction with and in order to, they're compound prepositions. We could cut them out. They serve no useful purpose other than to get in the way of the information. Let's rewrite it with them taken out. Here at the bottom of the screen. We prepared the interrogatories for the Puccini matter hastily to meet the discovery deadline. Now, is it easier to follow without the compound prepositions? Yes, of course it is. It's quicker, it's shorter. The prepositions don't get in the way of the information. Or what about this one? The partner said she wanted to discuss something with me in connection with my legal memo with a view toward improving my writing. With a view toward. In connection with. They're the compound prepositions. Let's get rid of them. Let's look at the sentence now. The partner said she wanted to discuss something with me about my legal memo so I could improve my writing. Well, there we are. The thing is, you want to cut down on the number of prepositions in your writing anyway. Legal prepositions are very difficult. So if you cut down on the number of prepositions, there's a good chance you won't make a mistake with them. And the one thing you want to cut out virtually altogether, unless you're making public speeches, is compound prepositions, as I've just shown you. Using too many compound prepositions makes the writing very formal, very pompous, makes it difficult to follow. It increases the number of words in the sentence, so you have to write more, taking longer. Avoid it whenever possible. Now, here's a little exercise for you. Okay? Have a look at these questions on the screen. We'll go through the answers at the same time. Try and complete all 1, 2, 3, or 4 questions, and then we'll go through the answers. You're going to replace each of these compound prepositions with one word. It may not be in the preposition at the moment. You've got to work out where you're going to put in their place. So what we're doing here, I want you to do all 4 sentences first, and then we'll have a look at some answers. I can see answers coming through. That's great. Number 3, I think, is very difficult. Okay, I'll let some more come in, and then we'll go through the answers. Right, let's have a look at these latest answers. Yeah, 3 is difficult, isn't it? Just to let you know that the answer to 3 is not at, right? Okay, nobody's got it so far. Let's have a look at these. No, lawyers are art. Yes, Apple Zhenyang, they are. Lawyers are artists. That is what our professional, that is why clients are paying us. Now, let me just comment on something that Apple Zhenyang said. Lawyers are artists. Yes, you are. Why are clients paying you? They're paying you to achieve things for them. Get contracts written and signed by the other side, win law cases, enter into negotiations, transfer land, buy shares, sort out matrimonial problems. But they're paying you to achieve things. Now, how are you going to achieve it? Well, 80% of the time, you'll probably achieve it by writing to somebody, 85% of the time even. Now, you're probably under the impression that your clients are paying you for your legal knowledge. Well, no, I don't think they are. It's taken as read or as understood by the client of legal knowledge. What they're paying you for is your ability to achieve things in writing, by your writing. You've never probably thought about this, but quite frankly, you're all professional writers. It's right when saying that lawyers are artists. You're being paid to write effectively. That's why legal writing is the most effective skill you can have, the most basic skill you need as a lawyer. If you can't write to express yourself, you can't really do anything for your client. So in a way, you are artists, because to make your writing interesting, you'll select interesting words, powerful words. Yeah, I don't think, well, we might look at one power word in our next lesson, the most powerful word in all legal writing. Perhaps we'll have a look at that next week, or in our next lesson. Right, let's have a look at our answers here. On, against, despite, with, watching. Okay, you're all doing pretty well. Right, the explosion could be heard from 5 kilometers away. We have 5 dogs and 2 cats. It's his habit to doze, means fall asleep, to doze off. Notice that a verbal phrase, to doze off, in front of. Well, what place is he in relation to the television? He is before. It's his habit to doze off before the television. He's sitting before it, in front of it. And then they continue with their search and rescue mission. In spite of becomes despite the bad weather. How did you do? Anybody who got 3 out of 4, give yourselves, as we say in England, a pat on the back. Anybody who got 4, very well done indeed. Right, let's move on to something you must know, even though it's not exactly exciting. Legal Latin words. If you want to practice international law, you must be able to deal with legal English, because the first lawyers back in ancient England were priests. They brought a lot of Latin language into the law. And when contract law sparked back into life in the early 19th century in England, the judges loved Latin, and so lots of our legal ideas are expressed with Latin terms. Consensus ad idem, res ipsa loquitur. All these words, all these terms are what are known as terms of art. They have a legal meaning. And lawyers, unfortunately, are forced to use them because by expressing the legal phrase, we can express what it would take 2 or 3 sentences of writing in English to say. So, as I said, when the Romans left Britain in the 4th century, within 70 years, all the schools closed. The only people left on the island that knew how to read or write were the priests. They made the priests the lawyers. As they spoke Latin, they've included a lot of it in our law. I've got 25 words in this presentation. I'm not going to go through them. I'm going to go through about 10 of them. The most important, I suppose. Ipso facto, which means by that very fact. You did not pay the monthly installment on your mortgage. Ipso facto, you are in arrears with your mortgage payments. Mea culpa. Most of you know this. Mea culpa means it's my fault. Mea culpa, my fault. Mutatis mutandis. You will use this when sending documents backwards and forwards between lawyers to law firms. It means all the changes that are necessary to the document have now been incorporated into the document. Mutatis mutandis. Those of you who are contract drafters may already use this phrase. It means I've adopted all the changes into the document. This is the final version. Obiter dictum, well, this only applies in the common law. It's comments made by a judge when passing a judgment, which don't relate directly to the facts, but they're a statement of what the judge believes the law to be if the facts had been slightly different. And it's very useful in letting other lawyers know what the law might be on a point that has not yet come before the court to be decided. Obiter dictum, a remark made by the way or in passing. Per annum, we use this all the time already, don't we? It's in English, but it's Latin. Per means each. Annum, as you can guess, means annual. Per annum, per year. Per diem, per day. The rent is $100 per diem. Per capita means person. Capita, person. Each person. Per se, very important, it means by itself. This refers to the fact that an adult can bring a court case in their own right. They don't have to be appearing through a lawyer or on behalf of somebody else. They're a legal person per se, by itself. Post-mortem means after death. When a person has died, there's an examination of the body post-mortem, after death. Prima facie. This is very important in both civil and criminal cases. Prima facie means at first sight. It means how the facts appear when we first look at them without hearing the explanation from the other party. The first thing somebody in court has to do when they try to present their case, at the very least, they've got to produce a prima facie case, which at the very least requires an explanation from the person on the other side, other than the judgment will then be given against that person if they don't give that explanation. And sine die. It means adjourned without a day. Sine, without. Die, die, day. It means a case or a matter is adjourned indefinitely, may never come back. It's adjourned indefinitely, sine die. And sine qua non means without which or not. It's used to refer to something which is indispensable. It's a sine qua non, meaning if without this, we can't proceed. It's a sine qua non that we must have capital to run the business. Without it, we can't proceed. Sub rosa. Literally, sub always means under. Submarine, substandard. Sub means under. Sub rosa means under the rose. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's idiomatic Latin, meaning something that's occurring, but it's not occurring on an official basis. So it's being done, but it's not being done officially. That can apply to lots of different things in lots of different countries. And ultra vires, very important. Ultra vires, ultra means beyond. Vires means power, right? Beyond their powers. So a body, a government, a court, a company, a person is doing something which they're not empowered to do. The court is imposing a judgment which is not allowed to impose because it's too big. The government is doing something which is not allowed to do. So ultra vires means beyond their lawful powers. Yes. Now, all of you from Romance language countries, Italian, French, Portuguese, Spanish, you'll find these words much easier to understand than those of us from the non-Romance language countries. The only problem is we have to learn their meaning as they're used in the law. Now, I'm not going to go through all 25 words, okay? That's more than 20 at a time. Psychologists have carried out studies which say you can't take in more than 20 words in one day. So I'm certainly not going to go through 25 Latin phrases in one short lesson. But you will, of course, be able to watch the recording of this lesson. And of course, you can get a copy of this presentation as well. You can download it from our website in a few days. And you can go through these words on your own. And I recommend you go through it 3 or 4 times, this particular section, to memorize these phrases. Right, well, that's enough for today, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Now, favor to ask of you. I would really appreciate it if you could all arrive 5 minutes before the start of the next lesson to save me having constantly to admit people during the course of the lesson, which I find distracting, and you can see it affects my flow. And the other thing is this: we're about to launch our new website in China. Now, I need to know that I can broadcast to hundreds of people at the same time. So we've got about 40 people in the lesson. That's fine, but I'd really like it if we could have 400 people. I'm going to ask a favor of you to tell some of your colleagues and friends, you may be bored, sitting at home, whatever. If you like this lesson, please tell them how to register. That way I can test the system to broadcast to hundreds of people at the same time, so I know it will work when we start broadcasting in China. Well, let me stop sharing for a moment, bring myself back on the screen. Right, well, thank you very much for joining me again today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to get a copy of the presentation and go through the Latin words. I'll see everybody again on Tuesday of next week. By the way, I will just give myself a small advert here. We've got our new contract drafting course starting on the 4th of May and our new legal writing course starting on the 4th of May. We still have places open. There are discounts during this coronavirus period. Those of you who want to perfect your contract and legal document drafting, this genuinely is a very good course. Those of you who want to learn contract and legal document drafting, you'll see from the comments that people who are virtual beginners feel that they've achieved almost near professional high quality standard by taking this course. For legal writing, those of you who are involved in arbitration, litigation, mediation, negotiation, or just general correspondence with clients, writing reports, and want to persuade, then this is the course for you. Both groups start on the 4th of May. We've still got places open. There'll only be 8 people in each group. So write to us. Otherwise, thank you very much as usual for watching, everyone. Don't forget to take these free tests on our test page. And I hope to see everybody on Tuesday of next week. Have a great weekend. Ramadan Kareem to those of you in Muslim countries. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Bye bye.